presentation on the theology of the body is we highlight like the goodness of the body and the goodness of sex and the goodness of having a purity of heart. We're going to talk about that in a second. But then they can say, well, what about me? Because my story is not like one of a perfect line. Mine is a broken story. What if I have experienced shame, not just because I was born into original sin, but I've experienced shame because I've done stuff that I'm ashamed of? Does that mean that I'm done? The very fact that you experience shame highlights your dignity. That's what John Paul II is saying here. The fact that we all still experience this, like, oh man, I'm saddened at this, or embarrassed, or again, the best word maybe is shame, feeling shame about this. It highlights the fact that but you didn't lose your dignity. You retain your goodness. And that's so important to remember. To remember that even for all of us in the state of our messiness of life, that you still are promised redemption, like Nick had mentioned with that old Milton flying to the cross and seeing God's promise. That's so important. And it's also important to be seen. One of the things that is not in your notes, but we talked about the difference between shame and guilt. I don't know if you've ever thought about the difference between shame and guilt. Some people define it like this. They say that guilt is having violated the standard. I'm guilty of violating the standard. I believe that it's wrong to lie, and I lied. There's a standard that says, tell the truth. I violated the standard, and now I have guilt because I've broken that thing. That's good. In fact, we should experience guilt when we do something wrong. If we didn't, that's called being a sociopath. But guilt is violating a standard. Shame is something different. Shame is always relational. It goes back to Adam and Eve, right? So she sees something in his eyes that she leads to say, okay, I feel shame now. He sees something in her eyes, looking at him, is like, I feel shame now. Shame often comes out of how we're seen by others. So again, if guilt is I violated a standard, shame is I violated this relationship. That if guilt is I'm not who I could be according to the standard, shame oftentimes is I'm not who I should be in your eyes. One of the reasons why I just love, it's awful, but it's powerful. Years ago, there was a priest from Africa who had come up to Hibbing. He gave a presentation, and in the course of his presentation, he talked about some of the situations that his villages were experiencing, that they had in rival villages, and some really, really terrible things would happen to the people in his village, specifically the women. What the rival villages would sometimes do is they would come in and raid the village, or steal these women, young girls, from the fields and take them into the jungle and violate them for however long, days, weeks, and then send them back to the village. And if the violation itself out in the jungle was bad, you would think that, and now here's this small community, and these girls are being brought back or sent back to their fathers and their mothers, their brothers and sisters, to their future husbands or current husbands, to their children, that what they were trying to do was they were trying to not only violate them physically, they're trying to shame these women, and then by sending them back, saying, no, they're used. They've been violated, and you don't want them back. That was what the mentality was of the people who had taken these women and hurt them so badly. But he said, in my village, it was interesting because whereas normally, a lot of times in the West, we probably know this, when someone experiences some kind of assault, we keep it hidden because of the shame. We keep it hidden because there's a threat of blaming the victim. We keep it hidden because, like, again, I feel this, there's something wrong with me now. I'm used up. He said, but in our villages, when our daughters, when our moms, when our wives be sent back to the village, the entire village would gather. And there'd be a massive celebration. That everyone in the village, they knew what happened. All of them. But in their celebration of saying, but we have you back. But you're still our mom, you're still our daughter, you're still our sisters, you are still my wife. And the whole community receiving them back and saying, no, you are not used up. You've been hurt, but you are not used up. You are still ours. What he said is those women didn't experience any guilt because they weren't guilty. They didn't violate the standard. they were used, but they also were set free from shame. Why? Because in the eyes of their family, in the eyes of their community, they were like, no, it is good that you exist, that this happened to you, and we grieve with you, but we celebrate the fact that you've been given back to us. Does that make sense? This is what part of that redemption is a sense of like, we experience the shame, but we're made to be seen not only under the gaze of the Father, but also to be seen by each other. That's one of the reasons why God gave us a church. And so when we experience that shame, we experience that brokenness, that our brothers and sisters, our fathers and mothers can look at us and say, but you belong here. It is good that you exist. That you don't need to be bound by shame. Because why? Because we have a Redeemer. And that's the next step we're going to take right now, is this movement towards, this is not just a story of brokenness, this is a story of redemption. And your story, my story, it's not over right now. It's just, whatever's happened up to this moment, that's just the beginning of the story. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to allow chapter 3 of your story, if your chapter 3 is one of like Genesis chapter 3, we're not going to allow that to define the rest of the story. It's going to affect the rest of the story, but it doesn't have permission to define who you are. It doesn't have permission to define the trajectory of the rest of your story. There's something more, and that's the promise of the Redeemer. That's why on the very last page, they quote, talks about this. It says, not the big one, but because of the disobedience, the love of God expired from their hearts, which means that eros got cut off from agape. That recognition that Adam and Eve had of like, wow, at last, this is the one. I want to give myself to you, right? Eros, oh, you're it. Now I want to give, agape, got separated. And so then the heart becomes a place where the battle of, will I be one who loves, or will I be one who uses? The heart now becomes the battlefield. And as it says, big book, the heart has become a battlefield between love and lust. The more lust dominates the heart, the less the heart experiences the nuptial meaning of the body. So that's the next step. It's like, okay, so what is that? Like, can I experience a transformed heart? A review. You're made for love. Shame doesn't erase that. Sin doesn't erase that. You're still made for love. A past of your choices or someone else's choices against you, don't erase that. You're made for love. You're given a body. You are your body. What you do with your body matters. The flesh is the hinge of salvation. God gives us His grace through our bodies and through stuff. We experience that solitude. We experience the original unity, original nakedness. Now we experience original sin. But that's not the end of the story. We're talking about what does Jesus say when He looks into our hearts and He sees that brokenness. That's what Nick's going to start off with.
There's a scene in Scripture where Jesus is talking to His disciples, and He says that you've heard it said, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." But I say that even if you've looked after a woman in your heart with lust, you've already committed adultery. And I remember, like, I think the most terrifying verse in all of Scripture with me growing up would be that. Because, like, Jesus is supposed to be my friend. He's supposed to be my pal. He's supposed to understand my situation. He knows how messed up I am. He knows I'm an idiot. This should be a given with Him. And for Him to say, you've heard it said, don't commit adultery. Yeah, okay. I remember thinking, especially getting into high school and making all the mistakes I could make, I remember thinking, well, okay, I know that I can get to a point where I have self-control, where I can get to a point where I will never physically cheat on whoever my wife ends up being. I can do that. I know that that's within my power because I am in control of my body. But for Jesus to come along and say, but if you even think it, you did it already. That's harsh. And I know any guy who has encountered that, it's usually guys who would encounter that going, like, what? I can control, but to say don't think something. How do I stop that? How do I break that? This is me. This is like so when I was 8 years old, this was back in the day before like cellular telephone technology and the internet webs. I was walking in the woods at 8 years old with my buddy. We're walking along, just playing, and we found somebody had stashed some pornography out there, some porn, and that 8 years old, you're not sexual, but we found it, and there's just this immediate form of attraction. And I would say like that began giving me an education on what love looked like in the body. That gave me a definition. Now, I would go home, and my parents, they didn't get along. I didn't know my real dad until I turned 18, and because he was abusive, he was alcoholic. Then the dad I had growing up, my parents fought every day of their marriage until they divorced when I was 17. I had my aunts and uncles who were addicts and abusive, and then I had my grandparents who are still married. They're in their 80s, and they hate each other, but it's not like cute old person hate, like, oh, but it's like, ah. So I had all of that on one side. And then I had this that I discovered. And I have to say, anytime you're in a group of people and you mention porn, every guy in the room is suddenly like, what is this porn you speak of? What is this, naked people? I'm shocked, that's horrible. Okay. You know it. Everybody's in here, total holy face. Oh, that's wretched. The national average for a male to discover pornography is 7 years old. So everyone in here is older than that, hopefully. So you've experienced it, odds are you've chosen it. And when we talk about lust, it should be clarified that when we talk about using somebody, that women lust as well, just in a different way, generally. That anytime you take somebody from being a person and being an object for your gratification, that's where lust enters in. So Christ is equally speaking to women. If you've ever looked at somebody with lust and made them something for you, without them knowing, they become an object for you, they become your own personal ATM, then you've done it, then it's just like having done it. And I grew up with that porn mentality without even knowing it. And so I hit my teens, and to have Christ say, yeah, but if you even think it, it's done. Like, that was too much for me to take. That was one of the reasons that I internally would run from the church, because I knew that I couldn't do that. And it's important for you to know that Christ is talking to you. He is. He's saying, it's not just have you done it, have you wanted it? Have you entertained it? Have you desired it? But here's the difference. If, say we're in a burning building, like a 100-story building, and we're up at the top, and the exits are blocked, and there's flames everywhere, and we can't get out, and we know it, we're trapped. If I'm with you, I will very quickly begin running around screaming after I wet myself. And then I will tell you, I would run around screaming like, we're trapped, we can't get out that door, we can't get out that door, we have no hope, there's no way out of this place. And I wouldn't be helping the situation in any way, I would just be pointing out the obvious, so it's just what I do. But say we're in this building, we're in this building, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly what would happen, and you know it. I've seen it, he cries. We're in this building, it's on fire, we're stuck, I'm panicking, I'm running around making things worse. And then from outside of a window, you hear this deep voice saying, it looks like you're in trouble. It looks like you guys are stuck here. It looks like you guys can't get out any of these entrances. And we turn around, and outside the window, we see Kal-El, last son of Krypton. We see Superman floating. Shirt too, but I don't have pecs of any kind. So we're in the building, and you look out the window, and he's there with the billowing cape, and he's pointing out all the same things that idiot Nick is doing. But you're not scared in the least, right? You look out the window and you see him. You say the S means hope. You see him, and you are filled with hope. Why? Because he's not just pointing out the situation. He has a remedy. He is a remedy. And you have to understand, in every single word of Scripture, it is only hope and remedy. It might hit you wrong. You might be in a state where it scares you. You have to remind yourself, if Christ is speaking, He is only offering you hope. He is the way out. So Christ, if I had known that, Christ comes into some of you in here are addicted to porn. By the way, I was at a group last week, I was speaking to these kids, and I mentioned I found porn in the woods and addiction to porn, and kids begin viewing porn. And these girls in the front were laughing a lot, and it was a little distracting, but I fought through it. And afterwards, they came up to me at the end of the talk, and they're like, we just wanted to clarify, we were laughing because we thought you said corn. We couldn't understand understand why an addiction to corn was that bad. And why people began viewing corn and discovering corn. So good. Anyway. There's corn on the cob, there's cream corn, there's sweet corn, baby corn.
But Nick, what if someone's just like, no, I'm just really horny. That's it, you know?
Okay, well, you wanted to get that out there. We'll talk later.
I just want to know.
That's good. I really need to know. Right now. Well, that's a good question, Father. I'm glad that you asked. No, we know in Scripture that I don't know if they have it in the notes, but in Galatians, if you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. And what if you're like, no, I find that I want all of this. And you're telling me that this is not what I'm made for. That Christ is coming along and saying, no, I hope I can deliver you. But this is not what you're made for. Behaving this way, desiring in this way. And you say, but what? I want it though. What am I supposed to do? The beauty is that the hope that Christ offers is he comes in and he says, no, if you're under grace, if you allow me in, then you're not bound by the law. You can be transformed by the law. Because we know that laws, in and of themselves, they don't change our hearts. Everyone here, you drove here today, and I'm sure you encountered a white sign with numbers, and you're like, whatever. Right? You see, like, it says 30, you're going 60. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know me. All of us do it. We see the law, and we're like, it doesn't pertain to me. Because laws do nothing to change your hearts. And that's what Christ offers. He says, but I can come in and I can change the internal. I can change your dry, cracked, dead, stony heart into something alive.
Because that's the thing, is that Jesus didn't come to give us more rules to follow. This is very important because I think a lot of times we encounter what Nick has pointed out in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, where you desire to commit adultery, or you not only do it, but desiring to do it is wrong. Jesus didn't come to give us more rules to follow. He came to transform our hearts. As Nick said, just having a rule isn't enough to change our hearts. Having a rule is not enough to change our hearts. John Paul II says that heart is what he uses the term ethos. E-T-H-O-S. It's in your notes, ethos. So to change your heart, what he means by ethos is the ethos is someone's inner world, right? It's what attracts us and it's what repels us. And a lot of times we just have it, right? Remember the first time I ever drank coffee? I was like, ugh, it's supposed to taste like hot chocolate because it's warm and it's brown. It does not taste like hot chocolate. It is not for me. It was something that repelled me. And now I apparently got over that. Same thing is true for beer. When I first drank it, I was like, this is awful. And apparently I got over that too. But so what Jesus is saying is he's saying, the problem is not you're doing the thing. The problem is your heart. The problem is you desire to do the thing. You know, that might off the bat not be like, well, that's better. Thanks. You're saying my problem is not just my actions, my problem is my heart. Thank you. But he says also, as Nick pointed out, I can change your heart. I can give you actually a freedom from the law. That doesn't mean there's no right or wrong. What it means is you experience freedom while living in the law. And here's the example. What might that look like? We're going to go up a couple examples of what freedom, even having the law, but having freedom from the law, what that might look like. Is there anyone here who is married and your spouse is here with you? Okay, awesome. So two didn't answer each other. Okay. You might stand just for a second. Look at their bodies, everyone. Just kidding. Okay, can you introduce yourselves to us?
I just broke that. I'm Sarah.
I'm John.
Sarah and John. Everyone say hi, Sarah and John.
Hi, Sarah.
So, John, I have a question for you. Do you desire to kill your wife, Sarah?
Not today.
Sarah, do you desire to kill your husband, John? No. Great, wonderful. Everyone, round of applause. That was it. That was the whole distraction. I just saw you guys get sleepy, so stand up, you two. Just kidding. You can have a seat, though. So, the example, Sarah and John. They don't desire to kill each other. Therefore, would you say, Sarah and John, you can answer by being seated. Do you need, John, do you need the commandment, thou shalt not kill your wife? No. Sarah, do you need the commandment, thou shalt not kill your husband? No. Why? Not because it's not wrong to kill your spouse. Let me clarify. It's still wrong to kill your spouse. Freedom from the law means I don't even desire that. So yeah, it might be a rule, but here's Sarah and John who are free from the law. Why? Because I don't even want to break the law. It's not even a thought today, this particular Saturday. It's not even, so they experience a freedom in their heart, in their ethos. The idea of killing their spouse is repellent to them.
I just want to point out that John admitted to sometimes wanting to, so some detectives will be here at the break. It's a mistake, man. Also, most of us, if we walk into a room and you see a wallet just fat with cash sitting there and there's nobody around, most of us actually don't have any desire to steal that. We would find out who owns it, we would try to turn it in or whatever, because we don't need the law, thou shalt not steal, because most of us don't desire to steal. And so we're free from that law. The law doesn't disappear, but we're free from it.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, high schooler, I was on the cross-country team in the fall, and 1 week, all the guys on the team were going to get together like on a Friday night or something. We had a big invitational the next day. So we were going to carbo load, just the guys, and watch a movie. And so it was one of those things where, I don't know why, as 16 to 18-year-old young men, we thought a great movie to rent, although also we rented movies. It was a VHS from Video Update. And ordered some pizza with our dial phones. Anyways, I digress. The movie we rented was, I'm so embarrassed, it was called Faces of Death 4. So Faces of Death was please don't look it up. It was a compilation of people having accidentally or incidentally been filming while someone died. And so it was a collection of real people really dying through accidents. And they captured it. And we're all these 16, 17, 18-year-old guys were like, yeah, we're going to rent Faces of Death, and it's going to be awesome. And it was one of those things where we thought we were attracted to that idea because it's so on the edge. It was really interesting. We popped it in, we pressed play, things go by, and the first scene comes on, and within seconds, every one of us is just, no one had to say anything. Everyone was just like, we don't want to do this anymore. A room of 30, 16, 18-year-old guys. We're all just like, we need to turn this off immediately. Because there was this freedom there, right? Like, I thought that I wanted this thing, I don't want this thing. See, the thing is, so that I'm free from that rule. Now, if my parents would have said, you don't want to watch that, I'd be like, yes, I do. I found out, no, I don't. So there's this interior freedom. Same kind of thing. Last night we actually watched a bunch of fail videos. We had some supper, we sat in the Newman house, and like, let's watch fail videos, because that's what I do.
It's a holy friendship.
It's really good. And it's so fun to watch these people fall down. And you shouldn't want that. And like, I know. But something happens. I remember one day I was at my parents' place on the lake, and one of my nieces was running down the sidewalk, and the sidewalk has a little decline towards the house. And she was tearing out, going so fast down to the house, and I'm seeing her run towards me, and the whole time she's like, no. And she just, some kids do this where their feet aren't going as fast as their body's moving. And she just like went forward and on the ground. She didn't get hurt, but like I was just like, I hate this so much. No one needed to tell me you shouldn't take pleasure in a little kid falling down. It was just like, no, there's nothing attractive about this at all. There's a freedom from that law of saying, don't laugh at other people's misfortune, because that freedom comes from love. I don't know these anonymous people on the fail videos, and I'm hoping that they got up. But when I love that person, I don't want their harm. I only want their good.
If you have siblings, my sister is beautiful. She's always been, from the beginning, just this beautiful girl. And she has grown into a beautiful woman. But I don't need the law, like thou shalt not have sex with your sister, or be attracted to your sister. In fact, that's kind of visceral. Like, oh gosh, you went there, okay. I don't like Nick. I don't like him at all. But that's good. That should say something. The vast majority of us don't need any rule at all regarding that. We can see beauty. I see my sister as beautiful. I can recognize beauty, but I don't want anything from it. I don't need the law prohibiting incest. Why? Because I don't need that law. And the fact that we already act like, oh, that's good. That shows that you're free from that law. Some people do need that law. Some people do have that brokenness inside. So they do need the law. And so what Christ is saying is, in all these examples we're giving, he wants to come and make us free from all the law because he wants to transform our hearts so they don't desire to break the law.
So like the Lannisters, as an example.
Yes.
If you haven't, some of you got that. It is a Game of Thrones reference. If we have a desire to abuse our freedom, then we need to be restricted. The quote here, beneath definition of ethos. John Paul II said this in a book called, or a letter called Veritatis Splendor, the Splendor of Truth. He said, those bound by lust, go ahead and bring it back to lust. If I'm bound by lust, he says, we experience God's law as a burden, and indeed as a restriction of their own freedom. And so we think about this, like, why can't I have sex with my girlfriend? Why can't I have sex with my boyfriend? Like, why can't we live together before we get married? Like, that seems like you're imposing something on me. Yeah, why? Because I experience a bond. I'm bound by lust. And so I experience God's law as a restriction of my freedom. Why? Because I want to do this thing. You're telling me I shouldn't do this. And if I experience that, if you hear like, okay, don't look at porn, or treat each other in a certain chaste way when you're dating or not dating, whatever, and I experience that as a burden or a restriction of my freedom, then I realize, oh, there's something in me that desires this thing that isn't love, but is actually more along the lines of use. John Paul II, he actually said, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is use. That oftentimes, in relationships, it can be like, no, I don't hate that person. How can you say I hate that person? I want to continue to date them. I want to continue to, like, no. It's not because you're hating them. It's because I'm actually willing to use them. So when God says, don't do that, I experience that as a restriction on my own freedom. It goes on, the quote goes on to say, on the other hand, those who are impelled by love actually feel an interior urge not to stop the minimum demands of the law. You realize that, like, yeah, doesn't love want to go above and beyond? Doesn't love want to say, like, not how far can I go, but like, not how far can I go to use you, but how far can I go to give? It goes on. But to live them to their fullness. This is a still uncertain and fragile journey as long as we're on earth, but it actually is possible by grace. But there's something in us, in true love, that doesn't say, how far can I go to use? It's, how far can I go in loving?
There's a book called What's So Amazing About Grace by Philip Yancey. And he uses an analogy for this that is super striking. So just picture your wedding day. You finally made it. You found somebody who's willing to tolerate you forever. And you plan the wedding, and you have the wedding. You have the wedding mass, and it goes great. You go to the ceremony, and it goes great. And you go to the reception, and it goes great. And there's dancing, and everybody is happy. It's wonderful. And then at some point, you guys are like, I know it's on its way. And you grab each other's hand at one point, and you're looking like, it's time. And so you walk out, and everybody's like, we know where they're going. And so, glad you're leaving. And so you walk down the hallway, and you're in the hotel, and you get in the elevator, and you're closer and closer, and you go to the bridal suite, and you go into the room, and you guys are in, and you lock the door, and you make sure none of your relatives are playing pranks and stuff. And then, because that happens. But then you disrobe, and you guys get into bed, and you're about to consummate your love. You saved yourself, you've waited, and you're in this moment that you've saved yourself for because of its beauty. And it's great, and you know that your whole future lies ahead of you. And just as you were about to, with your bodies, say what you said at the ceremony, at the mass, your husband looks you in the eye, and he says, hey, I love you. I'm so glad we're here. I'm so glad that we're doing this. And I want to keep us as good as possible. So before I wanted to ask, how far can I go with other girls and still be okay with you? Oh, no, you didn't. You actually smacked your mouth. That was awesome. Why? Think about if that actually happened. He sounds, I want to keep us strong. But what is he concerned about? He's concerned about the boundaries. How far can I go away from you and still be okay with you? And so that's what we do with each other. That's what we do with the law. That's what we do with God. Well, where's my leeway? Where's my boundaries? Where's the law? Where's the law stand? And all the while, what's the problem with that scenario? He's missing the one in front of him. He's missing his beloved because he's worrying about the boundaries. And we do that. We hear that there's a law, and we're obsessed with the law. And instead, through God's grace, what we should do is just dive into Him. Keep our eyes on Him, and the law doesn't matter. Keep your eyes on your beloved, and your boundaries fade into the background. They're still there, but they just don't matter. And this is, so what John Paul is saying is, this is made possible by grace. Because I know you're like, but I can't. All I can think of is the boundaries, the burden, the weight. And Christ says, but I know, but what I can come do is transform you so that that is not what you think of. Your heart is not straying to the left or the right, but your heart is just for me. And this is where you feel this groaning in our bodies. Our bodies inwardly groan for redemption. You know, Father talked about repressing or releasing. And John Paul II says, Christ offers a third. It's redemption. You take your brokenness and offer it to Him, and He transforms you. He heals you. So not the boundaries don't matter. All the brokenness doesn't matter. All you see is the one you love. And so we think sometimes that, okay, that redemption, no, that's spiritual. That just takes place in the soul. When Christ forgave my sins. But we are a spirit-body composite. So, we had Ben stand up. We are our bodies. And so if redemption happens, it happens, yes, in the soul, but not only in the soul. It happens in our bodies as well. This ability to be transformed is actual. And then the mistake we make is that it's already taken place. Well, I heard TOB, I'm done, I'm good, I can go do this. And the balance is saying, no, it's maybe not finished yet, but with Christ, this is the last line of that quote, but it is one made possible by grace. I'm on a journey, and it is a journey of grace and transformation. I'm not done yet, but I'm on this journey.
So some of this can seem like, that's so far. That I don't get that. I don't see this. New heart is possible. And for some of us, that might seem like, I remember hearing this example years ago. Imagine that we lived in a world where everyone drove their vehicles, but all their cars had flat tires. And everyone's car just had flat tires. I don't know if you've ever tried driving a car with flat tires, but it's super sluggish. You can't go fast. Everything takes a lot of effort. You're trying to turn the wheel, and it's not precise. It's slower. It's difficult. But imagine someone came along and said, hey, actually, you know what? In the beginning, no one drove around with flat tires. In the beginning, we actually are made to have our tires fully inflated. And you'd be like, yeah, whatever. I don't think so. But that's what the Lord says. He steps into this brokenness we experience and says, he goes, why? Because this loving others is just, oh man, it's so difficult sometimes. And it's so hard sometimes. And it's imprecise so often. Jesus, that's how it is, but that's not how it was. And that's not actually how it can be. So you can see here, redemption of the body, this new heart is possible even when we experience some failures. And that's one of the reasons why we need gifts, right? We need what John Paul II calls the 3 indispensable and infallible means of grace.
I was reading Theology of the Body. After I got trained, I was preparing a 14-week course. I'm reading through, I'm ingesting all this. And that's what John Paul II does. He makes passing comments that you can live forever on. They're just amazing indeed. So he makes this comment about 3 infallible, indispensable means of grace. And again, we're establishing the need for grace, the need for transformation. Well, then how do I get it? How do I do that? And he said, well, there's 3 infallible, indispensable. Infallible means they can't fail you. So if you avail yourself of these 3, you can't fail. But they're also indispensable. So if you don't avail yourself of these 3, you can't hope to succeed. They're infallible, but they're indispensable. You can't succeed without them. And you're reading, you're like, that's an awesome build-up. This has got to be something deep, and the world has never seen it. And he's like, and they're these. And it's prayer, confession, and the Eucharist. Prayer, confession, and the Eucharist. Like, well, but that's too simple. Think about it. Prayer is spending time with your beloved. Just recognizing him in any moment of your day, in any heartbeat, in any tick of the clock. Recognizing your beloved is with you. That's the surge of the heart towards heaven. Pray. Pray. And it doesn't mean pray 5 hours a day. It doesn't mean, spend your whole day in the chapel. It means just begin. Begin having a prayer life. Get up in the morning and acknowledge him. Take him with you through, just say, come with me, lead me through the day. We're talking about the gift, the hydrant. Just pick up your feet and say, just take me through the day then. Just guide me. Pray. And when you fail, go to confession. When you fail, I love it because the brilliance is when you fail, you still can't fail. Because confession is infallible. You go in just broken and bloodied from your mistakes and from your willful sins, and you go in and you come out alive. I made my first confession when I was 29 years old. I had 29 years. Like I started out the womb just doing it wrong. I did. My first confession was over an hour long. And that wasn't like dialoguing with them. It was just me reading for an hour. I had a spiral notebook full. Chapter 37. Chapter 98. And after an hour, I got done. I closed. My hands were shaking. I set the book down and I was like, so that's me. And there was this pause, and I'm like, this is where the priest kills me. And the priest looked at me and he said, hey, good confession. And I looked at him in a moment of inspiration. I was like, oh, you should have told me you were deaf. If you want to turn it up, we can start over. I can go again. I have time. He said, no, I heard everything. Just make your act of contrition. And I made my act of contrition, and it was gone. 29 years of utter failure, gone. And John Paul II is like, do you want to succeed? Do you want to love? Do you want to know the love of God like you were made to? Spend time with Him. When you fail to do that, run to the confessional. Just run. It's the safest place in the universe. Where else can you go in and say, like, these are my failures? Where else can you go as a failure and then hear somebody say, hey, good job? Besides college, of course. Pray, confess, and then when that's done, when the sin is gone and out of the way, run to the Eucharist. Run to His flesh given in love to you. Waiting in all of your weakness, waiting for you at the altar. Always waiting for you. Regardless of what you've done, waiting for you. If you do that, it's infallible. We'll see each other on the other side. But if you won't pray, confess, or run to Jesus, you can't hope to succeed. And what Christ is saying, this is made possible by grace. You have flat tires. I've never had a car with good alignment in my whole life, because every car I've ever had was a hand-me-down. And so one time I was going to North Dakota. Any North Dakota? Okay? Whatever. So you go to North Dakota, and you can see across the state. Every road is just straight. Oh, there's the other side. And my grandpa let me use his car. He's got a Grand Am, and nothing of my grandpa's is out of place. So I'm driving this car on the road, and every car, with your alignments off, it's constant fighting. You can't let go because it's constant veering. And that's what our sin does. Without grace, that's what we do. We veer. It's like herding cats. But I'm in this car, I'm driving on the road, I'm alone, and I realize, oh, this thing is tuned up nice, this is good, this is dialed in. So then just, kind of like, take my hand off the wheel, and I kid you not, for 3 miles, I didn't touch the steering wheel. 3 miles! I was having a religious moment. Took a nap. It was so awesome. But we're talking about eros and all this passion. That's actually what Christ wants to do. He wants to fix your alignment through the grace and mercy of the cross. He wants to fix your alignment so that you don't have to restrain or withhold. You can just let go. And that's what He calls us to. That's what He promises.
And I actually met people like that. That are just free to love. And then don't just that, they look like they're free to love. But even when they share with me or that their deepest desires of heart, when it comes to it, it's like, I'm waiting for them to say, but I'm not all wrestling with this as broken. Like, they're like, no, I need to see them. There's right. They're aligned. That ethos has been tuned well to the Lord. That's the gift of grace, but it also involves another thing. And the next book was page over. It involves discipline as well. Because one of the things we recognize is that it's possible for someone, this might be a shocker for you, it's possible for someone to still struggle with this even after having known the truth. it's possible for someone to struggle with this even after they know, like, oh yeah, I went to that TOB. This is my 4th time going through the TOB day. I've seen the one with Nick too, so like I'm good, I got this down, and still struggling to live this out. There's grace, but there's also the discipline. And I love this quote from John Paul II. He says, those who seek the fulfillment of their own human and Christian vocation in marriage. So anyone who wants to be a saint are called, first of all, to make this theology of the body the content of their lives and behavior. Which means it's not just a Saturday conference that you drove across the state for, or drove up the hill for, or whatever, but it's actually the content of my life and behavior, which means it touches all my relationships. It doesn't just touch how I see romantic relationships, it also touches how I see my parents. It touches how I see my siblings, it touches how you look in the mirror. To view this TOB as the content of like, so this is how I look at the world. That I find myself under the gaze of the Father and I realize my identity is in Him. That I look at myself and realize, okay, here's who He's made me to be. I look at the people next to you that you maybe have no attraction to, desire to use, and say, yeah, that's how I should look at everyone. You've probably had that experience, right? You look at someone, I have no desire to use them. You just see a person. Like, okay, yeah, I want to have that, like, alignment with everybody. But in order to do that, it takes not only grace, but also this discipline. It takes training. You know, I understand when we say that, it's like, okay, this is the love conference, or the sex conference. And Father, you don't understand at all, because love should be spontaneous. Like, love you should just be able to like, kind of go with the flow. You should be able to just, it shouldn't take effort. It shouldn't be tough. I think that's kind of one of the things that the world tells us, is that, yes, love is easy. Just go with how you're feeling. Just go with your gut. That might be possible, but it's only possible after training. For example, I'm going to walk away from the microphone right now and walk across the room. I don't know, we'll see. You guys still hear me? Hear me okay? Hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks. Well, now, let's try this. Okay. So imagine I go over to the piano. You don't even have to imagine, I just did it. And I sat down and I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling something right now, right? I'm feeling happy. So I'm going to play my happy song. I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to just... No, and I'm feeling mellow now. So just wait a second. I can't even get the foot pedal in. Pretty good. I don't know if you know, I never had a lesson. But it's the sense of like, I should just be able to sit down and like do this awesomely. Now, again, I actually did have lessons from like 1st grade to 5th grade and never played again. Last year at this conference, we had Peter Brown, who is a jazz performance major. And I was like, Peter, could you come down and just play what you're feeling? And he came over here, and it was not loud. He came over here, and he just sat down. I'm like, Peter, play something sad. And he just, boom, sad sounding. Okay, Peter, now play something that's like really upbeat. Boom, boom, boom. It's jazz, right? Peter, play something that sounds like, you know, it's heroic. Okay, and he could just, because he spent hours and hours sitting in that place, training himself to be able to know how to do it right, so that when it comes time to like, okay, now just do it from your heart, he was free. So freedom actually requires discipline. If I want to be free to love, I first have to have the discipline to love. It's like, remember Dr. Sri was here on campus a couple years ago. And I want to try this one. Be like, Nick, is this okay? Yes, okay. Dr. Yeah, thanks, Preston. Nick is right there. Dr. Sri was on campus a couple of years ago, and he said, what if, he said, imagine someone was really passionate about flying, like really passionate about airplanes. So you go to their house, in their living room, it's all these framed pictures of airplanes, all these model airplanes sitting all over the place. You go into their bedroom, it's like posters galore of airplanes and famous pilots, and they have all these books picture books about airplanes lined up on their shelves and on their coffee tables and stuff, and they're really passionate about airplanes. Now, they never learned how to fly, but they're really passionate about airplanes. And they say to you, hey, actually, this Saturday, someone's willing to lend me their plane. Would you want to go up with me? Say, you don't
You've never flown before? No, but listen, I am so passionate about flying that I don't think we need any lessons. I think sometimes we think that way when it comes to love. It's like, no, I'm so passionate about this person that I don't need any discipline, I don't need any training because I'm so passionate about them. I care so much that I can do it. Just give me the wheel. We wouldn't get up in a plane with someone who didn't have any training. Why would we enter a relationship with someone who didn't have any training in the discipline of love? Because why? Because freedom requires discipline. Last little example before I head back to Nick. I remember watching this documentary on Netflix a bunch of years ago. It was called Surfwise. Surfwise was a documentary about this family. The dad had gone to Stanford Medical School, but he really liked surfing. And so what he did, he was a doctor, and he was a surfer. How he lived is he met this woman who also wanted to be a surf bum. And so what he would do is he would sign up to work at a hospital for however long to make some money, and then he would leave the hospital and just drive all over the place surfing. And then when he ran out of money, he would show up at a hospital and say, "I'm a doctor from Stanford," and he just would hire him. It was another time, and they raised like 6-8 kids, and they raised them like that. They lived in a surf van, and they traveled all over the place. Didn't have to go to school. They got to surf all day. And so they're interviewing these now grown children. The first half of the documentary, it was awesome. Our childhood was so great. All of our friends and the kids we met our age were so jealous of us. They had to go to school. We got to go surfing. We got to live in this place, and this place, and this place. And they said, I remember we got down to I think we had 2 dimes we could rub against each other. And my dad drove into the town. I'm a doctor. Okay, here, make money, stay here. The first half was how awesome it was to be raised without any discipline, to be able to surf whenever they wanted. But then the story changed. They said, okay, where are you guys now? That was the story of your childhood. How you doing now? And it was almost like this 180. Because every single one of those kids says, I tried to get a job here, tried to do this new thing, tried an opportunity here, couldn't. Why? Because you need degrees. You need to go to school to get degrees. You need to have some discipline to have opportunity. So their dad had discipline the first part of his life. So at the second part of his life, he was free to do whatever he wanted. To be a doctor or to be a surfer. His kids didn't have discipline early in life. So they actually weren't free to do what they wanted later on in life. Their freedom was actually limited. This is the truth when it comes to us. When it comes to love, is okay, I should just be able to love how I want or live how I want. If I learn the discipline of love, then later on in life, I now have the freedom to love.
Now, we have 2 temptations. We have the first temptation is to say that it's not possible. I don't care how much I train myself, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't. And it's denying the possibility of redemption at its core. When I first heard Theology of the Body, I wasn't Catholic, I hadn't heard anything about TOB. We went to the third night of a 4-night series our father was doing here on campus. We showed up, and when we left, just impacted, and all our minds were reeling, and so we had this outline. So then the next day, we went to our Protestant Bible study group with 35 young adults, and we're like, you guys gotta hear this. And so we started just teaching the outline the next night. And we're going through no, this is so possible. We just learned about your brokenness, but God transforms, and there's flat tires, and we're going on and on. And it was really exciting. And everybody in the room was charged, because that's what it does. You can feel it yourself when you hear this. It's good news. And so we're sitting there, and we got done with our little bit, and my friend, who's a youth pastor in town, he was like, well, and he had a little bit of a smirk. He was like, that's great for you guys. That's really nice that you believe that. And I'm sure maybe that would work for you. But some people are just wired differently. What he was saying was some people are so far gone, some people, it would be just actually impossible. And I don't have a lot of moments of inspiration in my life, as you can tell. But I had this moment where it was very clear. And I looked at him and I was like, wait a minute, we're Christians. You're telling me that you believe that God could create the world by speaking and then send his son of a virgin. And that his son walked the earth and did miracle after miracle after miracle. And that when he was crucified, he rose again of his own power and then ascended into heaven and sent the Holy Spirit. And you're telling me that God, you're too far gone, that he can't help you? And he paused and he was like, no. I'm like, then shut up! just shut up! Because we throw up all these defenses and God God's like, shh, no. I'm the God of the universe. If you let me, I can do anything. So on one hand, we can't deny the power of the cross. We can't deny what redemption can do. But the balance is that we also have to be able to admit we have to train in anything of worth. We have to put effort into. And God takes that and multiplies it. And so you're like, well, how would I even start? We were doing a confirmation retreat in Pine City years and years ago now. And I was giving the men's talk, and I had my own small group of guys, these 8 guys. And has anybody been to the Catholic Church in Pine City? Doesn't matter. So we were there. There's the sanctuary, and then there's this door up by the altar that leads into this little in-between room. And then there's the lobby of the church, the entrance hall. And so there was a wedding going on that day. So I give this talk to these guys. And I'm like, guys, all you need to do, you know what? Start with this. Just look her in the eyes. You might be tempted to look elsewhere. You might be tempted to look at her whole body. Just look in her eyes. Start there. Because if you think that's not easy, just try it. I mean, that's too hard. Just try it. So we're like, I gave this talk, we get done, I have my own small group, and we're in that little room. And we're sitting on the floor. And I'm like, so, guys, so there's this wedding going on. And there's hustle and bustle, people doing stuff. And I'm sitting on the floor, and I'm like, so guys, what do you think about the talk, like what I was talking about? And this one kid opened his mouth to speak, and the door flies open, and this woman walks through. And she is amply endowed, and she wants you to know, which we can see most of that. And then she has a short skirt on. And we're on the floor. There you go, now you're with me. Me and these 8 boys are on the floor. And she burst into the room, and every guy was like, oh! And she went through the door, and they were like, oh gosh! And they looked up, and I was about to say, wow! And she burst into like, it was so awesome. And she walked out, and you could see like sweat and blood going out. Water. And we're sitting there, and I was so impressed with these guys. Because like they're right up, this is their first moment in the game. After having like one practical thing to do. And they were willing to do it. They were willing with just this first one. I don't even know if this is going to help. I'm just going to look her in the eyes. And with that moment, suddenly the Holy Spirit is there guiding, like helping them with that incredible effort of just keeping your eyes up. It was so beautiful. I was just in love with that moment. And it was great because then later in the day at lunch, some other guys came up and plopped their stuff down the front of them. We got to talk to you. I'm like, why? And they said, well, because after your talk, we looked girls in the eye and nothing happened. And I was like, well, that's because you're stupid. What are you talking about? What did you expect? She'd be like, marry me now. Like that. So here's the balance. The balance is this, that with training and grace, this is possible, that the smallest thing of just averting your eyes, when you recognize, I'm weak, I can't look right, and I want to do this, I want to live like I'm supposed to, that there's endless, infinite grace just waiting for you to give it that moment. And the world can be transformed with the look of an eye.
And that's the thing, is like, so maybe that's a guy kind of a thing, and so the question, what's it for women sometimes to objectify, or to not see the person, but to simply see a possibility. So for guys, a lot of times the temptation, maybe for both, everyone, but for guys, stereotypically, it's the temptation to see parts, not the person. For women, a lot of times, it's the temptation to see the possibility, not the person. So it's that notion of like, and maybe ladies, if you experience this, where you see a like semi-attractive guy, maybe he was at church as well, and all of a sudden you see him across like, okay, he's praying. And then all of a sudden, in 1.3 seconds, in your head, you already have named him. You've also you've dated, you've seen how he asked you out, how he noticed you, what he thinks about you, what you think about him. You've got to know his mom and dad already. He's a very good brother to his siblings. You've already been proposed to. You have 3.4 kids. You know exactly where you're going to live because he looks like an engineer, so I think he's going to be professional. Or I can see he has a stethoscope around his neck. He must be whatever. And it's this rush to not see the person, but to see the possibility. But see, both with reducing the person to the parts and reducing the person to the possibility, we've done something. We've taken away the person. And in fact, I know a lot of you, many of you here know Bailey Brazier. Bailey Burning is her name now. I'm like, a bunch of bees. Bailey Brazier married Ben Burning. But Bailey encountered Ben when Bailey Ben when they were both missionaries together on their dating fast on the same team. And so they could like express their feelings for each other. But at one point, Bailey was sharing with her sister about this Ben, and just like, I don't know, because I can't be thinking this because he's my teammate. We're on a dating fast. I want to just honor him for him. And her sister at one point said, but Bailey, just like let's just talk about Ben. Like, what would it be like to date Ben? Because she just wanted be a good sister and just like let's live that for a little bit. And Bailey said something really profound. Bailey, talking to her sister, she just said, I don't want to do that. Because if I get to date Ben, I want to date Ben, not my idea of Ben. That if I end up falling in love with Ben, I want to end up falling in love with Ben, not my idea or my imagination of who Ben might be. That sense of like, I don't want to reduce this person to a possibility. I want to get to know him. So for all of us, we all have this temptation to reduce the person to something smaller than that. And yet, what does Jesus say? It's in your notes. He said, blessed are the pure of heart. One of the consequences, or one of the images we can have for a pure of heart is someone who just can look at the person and see the person. So there's a story, remember hearing years ago, it just so affected me so powerfully. It's a true story. It's about a couple of bishops. This is centuries ago. These two bishops are leaving a church. They're walking out, this procession of bishops are walking out onto the street. And they're walking out into the street. One of them, his name was Bishop Nonus. And Bishop Nonus was walking next to a brother bishop. And they walked out of the church in this procession at the same time that this woman who was a prostitute was walking by, and she was dressed for work. We'll say it like that. She was dressed provocatively. And the one bishop saw her and looked away. Like, no, okay, yep, not looking there. Just gotta protect my heart, avert my eyes, like Nick was saying, just look away. But Bishop Nonus, was staring at her as she's walking by, just captivated and staring. And so the other bishop who looked away, noticed that the bishop walking next to him is staring at the prostitute and was like, Bishop Nonus, stop looking, don't look at her, avert your eyes. And as Nonus looks back at his brother bishop, his brother sees these tears streaming down his cheeks. And he looks at him and he says, what a tragedy that such beauty is being sold to the lusts of men. See, the bishop who looked away, he did the right thing. Because he knew his heart. If I look, I won't see the person. I'll just see parts, and I need to look away. But that's not the end. That's not the destination. The destination is to be able to have that purity of heart, be able to see what Bishop Nonus was, which is, okay, I'm going to look past the parts. I'm going to see the person. And that's the challenge for every single one of us. Because every single one of us, again, have this temptation to reduce the person to the parts, the person to the possibility, the person to something less, something that I can use for myself. But blessed are the pure of heart, because they can see that person and that purity of gaze.
You think about that. Just imagine for a second your life, if you let Christ in, and he takes this stony, broken heart and purifies it. Scripture tells us that in the pure of heart see God. Then wherever you go, whatever you see him, because you're pure. And that means, so Christian maturity then, mature Christianity, enables you to see the mystery of God in the body. Not just, in nature, not just in abstract or in theology, but to be able to see in the body, even the naked body, to be able to see the mystery of God revealed. That was always the intent. Again, you go back to Adam and Eve, and they looked at each other, and that's what they could see. They could see God and the desire to love like him. They could see how to live as gift. And we think of purity, chastity, we think of it as a negative connotation. It's like a don't. But it's not. Purity has a positive meaning. Purity is, I want to see the good. I want to stop being distracted. I want to stop stopping at the surface. I want to see everything. I want to see the entirety that God has in store and that he has made in you. And that's what God offers us. Again, it's lofty. That seems very, very lofty, but it is completely attainable through grace. It is completely attainable. If we will offer ourselves to God, let Him transform us, our pure hearts can walk out into this world and begin to see the beauty of God in every person.
That's why in your notes it says, this is what the problem with pornography is. John Paul II said the problem with pornography is not that it reveals too much of the person. You say, oh, I saw too much. That was so then we rank pornography based on how much of the person or how much of the parts we can see. That's softcore because you can't see everything, or but it's really if you see more. He says the problem with pornography is not that it reveals too much of the person, but that it reveals too little of the person. He goes on, the person in the image is reduced to their sexual organs and sexual faculties and is thereby depersonalized. So I don't care about you, I just care about the fact that this image is just simply meant to incite lust in me. There was this priest I knew who he was trained long before he became a priest. He was an artist. He still is an artist. And he went to art school like in New York City, some kind of one of those ones where you're like, oh wow, there? Yeah, there. And so he had studied art from across the centuries, from around the world. And he did this really powerful thing that he said, I want to show you the difference between pornography and art. Because again, this is not a prudish thing. If you go back to the Sistine Chapel, I don't know if any of you have seen that Sistine Chapel, but if you go in there, or if you just see pictures of it, it's covered with naked people. And Sistine Chapel means church, right? So it's the church. You walk in like, okay, a lot of naked people, just like, here they are. All right. So over the course of years, since Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, there have been some people who are more along the lines of the prudishness, prudish folk. And what they've done is over the course of years, had painted loincloths and other ribbons that would cover body parts. Back in the 90s, I think it was, maybe 80s, John Paul II commissioned the restoration of the Sistine Chapel. Because, over centuries it fades and whatnot. And in this restoration of the Sistine Chapel, he also instructed all the artists to remove the loincloths that people, in their prudishness, had painted over the bodies. He says that's not pornography. Pornography is always meant to incite lust, regardless of how much of the body is shown. And Father Loya is the name of the priest who was the artist. He gave these two examples. He put up on the screen, I don't have the picture, apologize, put up on the screen a painting of a woman who had her arms around a basin. And she was naked. She was washing clothes in this basin. And he said, just notice where your eye went when you looked at this image. If you picture this woman, your eyes go right to her face. And then he said, you follow her arms down to see what she's doing, her arms back up, and then you go back to her face. And you're taking in her whole self. Like the way the artist had painted this painting, it was one of those things where he described it, I'm like, yeah, that is what I did. I was her face, and yep, you see that she's naked, but you take the whole thing and take that whole image of this whole person in at the same time, and it's in some really incredible way. So that's good art. There's nakedness, but it's not pornography. Because that nakedness is actually intended to reveal the wholeness of this woman washing clothes in a basin. But then he put up a picture of it was a cover of Cosmo, I think it was. So you probably know, the person on the cover of Cosmo had clothing on. You imagine, I think that's how they sell that. Yeah. And it was of someone who was basically, dressed in it was a tennis skirt and no sleeves on the tennis skirt, and sitting on a thing with her leg up and kind of arm draped over here, and arm draped in between her legs, and looking at the camera, looking at you. And he says, this is more pornography than the picture I just showed you of the naked person. And at first, everyone's like, what? You say that you can't show your bare arms? He's like, not the arms. That she has, you can see her kneecap, like not the legs. He just pointed out, he said, I wish I had the photo. He said, look at the staging of the photo. So what happens? And he pointed out where your eye had gone. He's like, listen, I live in the art world. Not only is a painter, he's a photographer, and he says, when we pick these photos, when they pick this photo to put on the cover of Cosmo, it's very intentional. Your eyes go to her eyes, which are looking not just like disinterested, or not happy, or not like kind of like calmly at the person looking. They're looking seductively, right? So that you know what that looks like. And then what happens, he said, your eye goes immediately to her bare shoulder and follows her bare arm all the way down to her groin area. It stops. and go back up her arm to those eyes, and back down, and then back up. And it simply just reduces this beautiful woman to attractive parts. So the thing about porn isn't that what's the level of body part that it shows. The issue of porn is this meant to incite lust or is it not? Is it meant to incite lust or is it not? You can go into the Sistine Chapel and look at a bunch of naked people on the walls, not around. But it's not meant to incite lust. We can also look at some of those images on just a magazine rack, people with clothing, and you realize, but that is meant to incite lust. So that, for all of us, is going to be one of those, like, let me take that into my mind, into my heart, and just recognize, oh, that's not good for me. It's not about condemning, but it is about noticing what lifts me up or noticing what strips me down.
And this is, again, the beauty of John Paul II. As we go into our break, John Paul II knows us. He knows our hearts. And he knows that we get to this point where we're like, I'm a little discouraged. I'm excited about the hope, but man. So I can't trust anything. I can't trust going to the grocery store. I can't safely approach the internet. I can't look in anyone's eyes. I have to look away. And it's great. And this struck me when I first heard it. I'm like, I would have never thought to say this. But he says we cannot become masters of suspicion. We can't. Redemption doesn't magically alter our existence. It's not magic. We still get old. We get ill. We're still pulled by lust. But we can't allow that. We can't look around and be like, well, I know you're broken, and so I can't trust you. I can't even trust myself. I can't trust anything. You can't get frozen in that. So don't become a master of suspicion. Don't be afraid, because there's no perfect love casts out all fear. So there's no fear here. We don't have to suspect. We don't even have to be masters of suspicion of our own hearts. The encouragement that he gives us is that grace never ends. His mercy is new every single morning. We have 3 infallible means of grace. That when we experience the pull again, like, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I find myself lusting. I find myself creating an object, an ATM for my gratification. Then you run to him in prayer. If you didn't realize it and you went past just thinking about it, but you went into like, oh, I sinned, you run to confession. And when you're still golden and you find it, okay, I recognize the pull, not only will I pray, I will be one with my beloved. I'll go receive him. Instead of wanting to take from this person, I'll go receive him. And when we do that, life is a miracle. Life is hope and joy. We are Easter people, and Alleluia is our song. So as you go into the break, be encouraged. Be excited for what God has for you. Don't let the darkness of suspicion and brokenness in your heart reign. As we go into our break, just allow the happiness, the joy of God, the bliss and the healing that he has in front of you and in store for you to reign. Amen?